This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hey there and happy Tuesday. Welcome to episode 45 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts, and thank you so much for listening today. As always, it is truly my pleasure to have you as a listener. I know you have a ton of choices when it comes to podcasts, and I really appreciate you being here on my show. We are coming up on 50 episodes, you guys. I don't know if you noticed, but we're only 5 away, and I'm kind of excited about it. And I really feel like, I know I've said this a lot. I think I said this like back on episode 10. This feels like a milestone, but it really does this time. It kind of does, right? Like we're halfway to 100. That's great, isn't it? I think I'm going to do something kind of fun. Maybe a giveaway, maybe a fun giveaway. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Today, my guest is Meghan Ely from OFD Consulting. Meghan was in the wedding industry for 6 years doing reception planning before she formed OFD Consulting in early 2009. So she has been in this current business for over 8 years. OFD Consulting is a boutique agency for wedding pros, focusing on PR and marketing for those wedding professionals. And I think it's pretty safe to say that Meghan Ely is the leading educator on the topic of wedding publicity. She's a Wedding Wire education expert and columnist for CaterSource, Wedding Business Magazine, Wedding Planner Magazine, and SpecialEvents.com. She is the incoming National Vice President for WIPA and the Education Conference Chair for NACE. So yes, she serves our industry in many capacities. Not only that, you will see exactly why she is the leading educator in PR and marketing. Today, we are specifically talking about why you should be building a personal brand, even though your business is its own business and its own brand. You know, within that business and even outside of that business, you should be building your own brand. And Meghan goes into exactly why. She gives us a ton of tips on how a personal brand can be valuable to you, how it can help you attract your ideal client, how it can help you decide how you really want to appear in the world, either in your business or even if you work for another company, you should still be building a personal brand. Anyway, I can't say enough great things about this episode because it's so tactical and it's so informative and it's just the type of interview that I love. So Meghan, thank you so much for coming on the show and really bringing us all of this excellent information. Before we get started, I want to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by Podcasting for Creatives, which is my new course all about podcasting, launching on March 20th. I'm really excited about it, and I thank you so much for being a part of the show and for allowing me to kind of flex my podcast muscles these last 7 months. I cannot wait to share everything that I have learned these last 7 months and before that from just being an avid consumer of all things podcasting. You can find more information if you are interested at bit.ly/Let's Podcast. That's bit.ly/Let's Podcast. Anyway, without further ado, we are at episode 45. I just wanted to throw that in there one more time. And let's go to the show with Meghan Ely of OFD Consulting. Meghan Ely, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
You are very welcome. Thank you for being here. I was telling Meghan offline how excited I am to talk about building our personal brands and why it's so important to our business. And honestly, I can't think of a better person to talk about this. So,
thank you.
Yes, Meghan. As we chatted about, I gave everyone kind of your professional bio there at the top of the show. But I would love for you, in your own words, to just briefly tell us who you are and how you serve the wedding industry.
Sure. Well, I am the owner of OFD Consulting and have been for about 8 years now. We are a boutique agency. We focus mainly on public relations and marketing, and we actually exclusively work with the wedding industry. So we work with a lot of wedding brands. We work with planners, photographers, venues, travel agencies, and the like, all sorts of great folks, basically to help them build their personal brand and help increase brand awareness. And, all those times you see someone being quoted on brides.com or a wedding featured online somewhere or in a magazine, we're the type of person who would help make that happen.
That sounds like so much fun. Is it as much fun as it sounds like?
It's just like what now I was in weddings for a long time prior, and I always tell people, listen, it is fun and fun sounding and fun to talk about, but it also comes with its equal stresses. You're the thing about media relations is that you're at the mercy of somebody else. There's really literally it's no control. It's like how you can't control how much the best man's going to drink, the day of the wedding. It's completely out of your control. So you just do the best you can do, and to make things happen.
Yes. Oh, so true. Well, I would love to know, tell us more about you worked directly in weddings for a long time. I would love to know more about your journey as a reception planner, and how that kind of culminated into starting OFD in 2009.
That's a great question. I wish it was a better story. It's just kind of an interesting story in the sense that it went from point A to point B, and it wasn't necessarily a direct road, but it actually starts in high school. Kinsey, I don't know if you ever had to take one of those career tests, when you're in school and it says what you're going to be when you grow up. But I actually had one of those. Yes, I took one my freshman year of high school. And, I don't even know what questions they asked me, but outspouted public relations. It said that's what you would be, good at. And I'm like, what in the world is that? And so I didn't give much thought to it until I got to that point in high school where people are talking about college, and you get the inevitable questions during the holidays from family and friends saying, oh, what do you want to major in? And so I started testing the waters and just saying PR, like not really sure what that meant, but I got such positive feedback on it. Like people are like, you'd be great at that. So I just kept saying it. Mm-hmm. And then when it was time to start applying, I'm like, I really should get my act together and figure out what this was. And once I had a better understanding of media relations, I realized it was an area that really interested me. I'd always had an interest in journalism, and so went to college for it. Went to a wonderful school. Went to JMU here in Virginia, go Dukes, and had a really got a really strong background in public relations. But throughout that time, I really had this interest in weddings. There was something about it that appealed to me. I'm sure it appeals to other people as well. It just seems like, a party every weekend. Who would not want to work in that world? And over time, I kind of evolved my interests and said, you know what, I really have this pull towards the event industry. And so, I graduated. I did a really great internship out at the Nike World headquarters, got a feel for corporate after spending some time in nonprofit. I did detour a little bit and took a year off to work in AmeriCorps. I worked in the inner city schools, and that was something really important to me to do right out of school. But I started working part-time to make ends meet, and I worked for a local wedding, actually a really great estate that did weddings. And it was one of those jobs where you literally did everything on the ground. I worked nights and weekends, nothing glamorous about it, but I really loved it, which was a sign that this was the right industry for me. But I would say about 3 or 4 years in, here I was doing, hundreds of events a year. And as much as there's so much satisfaction to putting on a really great event, whether it's a holiday party or, my favorite, of course, were weddings, bringing the parents in to look in the room and they're like crying before the wedding. Like, I love that stuff. But what I found at the end of the day is, as much as I enjoyed that aspect of events, and I thought I did a nice job at it over the years, I felt that, the minute we got the smallest mention, even in the local paper, I mean, we're talking like a half an inch, mention, mm-hmm. I would just go bananas. I felt like I won a darn Emmy or an Oscar, and all we got was this brief mention. And I thought, you know what? There's got to be a way to combine these two loves. And so I continued to diligently work in the industry and started laying the foundation to go out on my own in early to mid 2009 and start my own agency.
That is incredible. I wanted to circle back a little bit. When you were working in corporate, like at Nike World headquarters, what were you doing there? Was it in the events or PR space?
That's a great question. No one ever asks me that. They always just want to know if I got free shoes. So I appreciate you jumping over that question, which the answer is no, but they were heavily discounted. I ended up working in the commerce department. And so I'm not sure if it still works like this, but it's really interesting. Actually, their sales team, they're called Ekins, get it Nike backwards. And so they're all over the country selling these lines to different shops. And so what they did is they actually had to be able to kind of promote the brand of Nike and keep people connected. They had an internal magazine called Behind the Lines. And so we had an editor-in-chief, Danielle. She was amazing. And so she had me help. I wrote for them. And then I took over for one issue, which was amazing. The whole, I got to pick everything start to finish. But being an overachiever, I would get my work done and be like, give me more work, please. And so I actually wrote script. This is kind of completely crazy. So I did journalism, but then I wrote scripts for these little cartoon characters that taught, it's kind of weird. So there are places that sell shoes, and then there's advanced running stores, like, the people who come in who are like hardcore runners. And so you need to train your sales team differently. And so they worked on a training program that included these little characters that were made with flesh and all this stuff at the time. I'm aging myself. And so I would be handed all the research on the mechanics of feet, the history of Nike, and I would write script for the cartoon characters so they could, train people on advanced shoe techniques and sales strategies. Isn't that weird?
That is seriously awesome. It is so weird, but in a great way. Like, I would never think. It's very likely that Nike has these little characters training their salespeople.
So, it was like this great virtual training program. And for me, it was amazing to learn that, because it's not far from what we do now. We take the expertise of our clients. Mm-hmm. They give us what we call jokingly brain dumps, and then we create kind of prose from that. We create the guest articles and the quotes and what have you. So it's not very far off what I did there, except there are no cartoons in my life on a daily basis anymore.
Well, and that's sort of like I bet that's like the early stages of really like gamification, especially in like corporate offices to train people and kind of
so cutting edge.
That Nike though, I tell you, it's like they're the biggest shoe company in the world or something. Well, let's jump into kind of the meat of the interview. I would love for you to, using all of your past experience, what is really, when you say a personal brand, what does that definition mean to you, and why should we be establishing ours as wedding professionals?
Sure. Well, to me, in the most simplistic terms possible, a personal brand is how you appear to the world at the end of the day. And what it typically does is it combines three components, at least to me. One is your personality, which is so important when it comes to being a wedding professional. I'm kind of answering this twofold. So that portion of personality, if you guys, I would highly recommend splendidinsights.com for all the latest statistics about consumer behavior for couples. But what we find they just released their 2017 findings, but it should come as no surprise that personality is one of the big things that people look at when they're determining what wedding pros to hire. So pushing your personality out there, but also your expertise, along with your value. When it comes to personality, like I said, it kind of speaks for itself. That's what couples want to see. But with your expertise, it's not just I'm great at weddings. You have to get more specific than that. Back when I did events, sure, I was great at when the planning side for venues, but I was particularly great, at picking wines, but that's because I used to love the wine tastings. But really, I was great at timelines and flow of events. I mean, things ran on time and they ran well. And my big expertise was I was a connector. I always made sure I could find you any vendor you wanted, even just whatever specifics you had about that. And then the value is, what do you bring to the table that no one doesn't? To answer your question, why personal branding, at the end of the day, there's so many reasons for it, but a big thing is to differentiate yourself from the competition, because you and I both know that there is no barrier for entry in the wedding world. You can get a website for next to nothing and call yourself a wedding planner. I mean, obviously, there are different components for different areas of the wedding industry, but you really can call yourself a wedding professional for about $5. It doesn't take very much. And so to build a personal brand makes you that go-to expert and potentially that natural leader. I always tell people, listen, as a wedding pro, the sooner you can become indispensable to your fellow vendors who can refer you, as well as prospects, the faster you're going to get booked and referred business. So, and it's not just small business owners, Kinsey. I don't know the exact makeup of the audience, but for anyone out there who was like myself, working for a wedding company for a long time, a personal brand really helps you move up in the ranks, in whether it's your own job or looking for other opportunities. I worked at a 5-star, 5-diamond property, a hotel. They hired me completely based on my personal brand because I had zero hotel experience. I was hired as a catering sales manager with zero catering experience. I mean, some would say they were probably desperate. I don't know, but I was able to push my marketing, my press. I could show that I was a fast learner and I could adapt. And I feel like other people who maybe they don't aspire to work out on their own, which is perfectly understandable, this allows them to move up the ranks, whether at their own company or other opportunities in town.
That is such a good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. So, and yes, we do have the audience is split up really equally between entrepreneurs who own their own business or people who feel entrepreneurial and behave that way within another company. So maybe they're an assistant to a wedding planner or what have you. But I really appreciate you saying that whether or not you are the quote face of the business or the owner of the business, or even if you work in a corporate setting but are still doing events, still building your personal brand, it's all relevant, right?
Absolutely. When I worked at this one particular spot, the Jefferson, I absolutely tried to embody that 5-star 5 diamond. And there was a lot of training that went into embracing that brand. But at the same time, I was simultaneously building my own reputation in the marketplace by joining the right organizations and taking on leadership roles and being that person that people could come to get connected to vendors. You can do both.
When do you think, especially if you're working inside of another company, when do you think, or if someone is, maybe new to the company or new to work or new to the business or new to kind of working in general, maybe they're a recent college graduate, how can they develop the confidence to start building their personal brand, and what can they do to kind of help, not expedite the process, but, dig in with both feet?
Sure. I think once they see the value of personal branding, which hopefully I can convince them a little bit today, they're going to, really organically want to expedite the process and just start no matter where you are in the process. This is more blanketed. Start by creating a base. I always joke, and I might be dating myself with this reference, but I actually teach at a local university. We teach PR, and I always talk about the Samantha Jones complex. The minute someone hears about PR, they want to be Samantha Jones from Sex and the City and stand there with a clipboard and let people into parties. But the fact is, to be able to get to that point, you have to build a strong base, and the same can be said for personal branding. The first things they need to do is ask themselves, what are my goals? Like, what am I looking at 1 year, 2 year, 5 years from now? That 5-year goals are going to change, but what does that map look like to you right now? To give you an idea of what you need to do to get that done. For me, I had my sights originally when I was working for others. I wanted to work at one of the top venues in town, which I was able to succeed, but as a result of taking those steps. So what are your goals? And think about, if you could start from scratch, how would you project yourself? Like, what would be ideal? For me, and especially with OFD, we're very clear that, we're confident in what we do, we're giving of our information, but there's also a disarming quality to our agency. I want people to feel like they can connect with us. You're not going to come here and see all sorts of perfect looking, like my Instagram is a mishmash of all sorts of things on purpose, because I want people to see kind of the real life behind the scenes. Ask yourself also strengths and weaknesses. So what is it that you do great, or that you want to aspire to do well, and how can you leverage that? So when you talk about how do you get started, for me, I had a background in writing, so I wanted to start small and see if I could start writing for even the smallest of places. It could be other vendor blogs. Back in the day, it was very teeny tiny wedding marketing blogs that probably had 100 people a month looking at it.
Right.
Yeah. And then with speaking, I was always kind of a natural speaker. I'd had great training. It's in my DNA from, my dad's a great speaker. And so I, again, have that confidence to just start small. I used to drive, 6 hours round trip to these small bridal associations looking for speakers. I would do it for free and build my portfolio. And it was a great experience. And when it comes to confidence as a whole, which is a great question, you just have to fake it. You have to fake it until one day you realize you are actually confident about what it is that you do.
Yes, so good.
I know.
Well, I want to touch on something you said too. You just mentioned how when you were building your personal brand, you did speaking engagements for free. You went around. And so not only were you building your portfolio, but you were also building relationships with people. You were getting to know people, and they were getting to know you. And so I love that you were in the trenches, just saying
Absolutely.
We don't all start getting paid 5 figures for speaking.
We don't.
It's
don't.
Right. Just, you never know who's in the audience or who's listening or who their cousin is. You seriously don't know. So get out there and just do the thing.
It's so funny because that's so true. And if I could impress one thing upon your listeners today, is it is a process. I belong to a great mastermind group, and we were just chatting about that. And it's funny to me how many people would come to me and be like, "Hey, I see what you're doing with, Wedding Wire and special events and cater stores. Can you hook me up with those editors?" I'm like, "No, that takes a long time. Like, you have to flirt and date and then you marry them. You don't just jump right in fully 2 feet here." And it does take time in building those relationships. And honestly, one of my most favorite early successes was, again, you don't know where people are watching. At the time, this is 8 years ago, I was really heavily invested in LinkedIn. And there was someone over in Ireland who's now a dear friend of mine, Annie with Ashland Events. And she goes, "I've been following your successes with what you've been doing. Would you like to come over to Ireland and speak?" I mean, I think I said yes before she finished asking me, but you just don't know.
You
be
don't.
willing to do that. Yeah, it's kind of like how you and I connected. It's so funny. We connected in a Facebook group. I mean, who would have thought that? You were so kind to me about an article I'd written, and then I did a little, internet stalking of you, and that's how we started things,
It's so true. And that's a great article. I will link that up in the show notes for you guys listening. And actually, Meghan is a prolific writer on specialevents.com. So I'll link that specific article, but then you can kind of go, I kind of got in the trenches and just
the rabbit hole.
The rabbit hole of everything. So, and so true. Like, even probably 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, I think I'm sure there's people listening who are, have had the same kind of relationship introductions in Facebook groups, but that was certainly not the case. 5 years ago, they probably weren't making that many connections in Facebook groups because they've become so mainstream, especially, as we run online businesses these last, 3-ish years.
It's so true. And, for me, do you know what I do? You can belong to all sorts of things and fall down a rabbit hole when things get kind of let's be honest. Some of these Facebook groups get a little nutty with some of the posts. Like, I just want to grab my popcorn and watch, but that doesn't it takes up too much time. So I always make sure if I'm tagged in something like I was on that one, I make sure I respond quickly. And I also run search terms. So there are certain things I'm looking for just so I can be a productive part of the conversation for the larger groups without taking up too much of my time. But that's I actually spoke at the special event last week on personal branding. And I said, guys, creating an online presence isn't just about having a great Instagram feed or Facebook or wherever you decide to spend your time, but actively being a part of Facebook groups. I run I'm the admin for I'm in Richmond, Virginia, Richmond wedding group. And I make sure that I participate in a bunch of the business ones as well, and I think that's a big part of it.
That is such, okay, you kind of just kind of glided over this, but if we could go back really quick, I just wanted to bring some clarity. When you say in Facebook groups that you do kind of search terms so you can be part of the conversation, am I understanding correctly that you will search for terms that you are an expert in, like weddings or whatever it is? Is that what you mean? So that you can kind of find those
absolutely.
streams? So smart.
Thanks. Well, otherwise you're just going to sit there all day watching some of the drama unfold, and it's fun, but then you're like, what am I doing? So what I do, like I said, if I'm tagged, I get an alert immediately, like if it's OFD or if it's Meghan Ely, and that's great. Or I'll stay with the thread if I'm a part of it. But otherwise, let's say I'm a caterer and I just type in catering, menus, things like that, maybe once every day or two, just to see, for me, obviously it would be PR, public relations, stuff like that. And plus that helps too, because if someone's looking for a public relations person, I'm happy to chime in if I might be the right fit.
That is so good. Oh my gosh. And I mean, so simple, but you're right. I would have honestly never thought of that. I'm thinking to myself now, okay, I'm doing this right after this call.
Sure. Well, let me ask you, do you happen to use Gmail or Google Apps or anything like that for your email?
All of the above. Yes.
Okay, well, this is my trick. So I've got a group I belong to with about 20,000 other people, and there's no way you can sift through. And I do searches, but even that starts to become cumbersome because it's an extremely active group. So what I do is I turn on all notifications, believe it or not, for that group, and I redirect them with a label directly to, let's just say ABC. I'm just making that up, ABC group. So all of them go there. And then I created a new filter. So every time the word wedding, which is what works in that group, wedding pops up, it actually goes directly to my important folder. So it's like, and now it fills up my Gmail quickly. So I have to go in and delete some stuff. So every time someone posts in there, I get an email, but it gets shuffled to a folder that I never open. And then I created a filter from that says every time the word wedding pops up, go ahead and put it in in my priority folder so I can answer it immediately. Yeah, that's how we've gotten in. We've used that to get a lot of national press, actually. So now you know my secrets.
No, okay, interview's over. I'm kidding.
I know, mic drop. I'm done.
No, seriously, that is so good. I'm ready. Okay, I might have to ask you like one more time how you do that, but I think I get it.
Yeah, we'll talk offline. Yeah, I'll walk you through it.
Yeah. Well, tell me, how do you feel about the terms like thought leader or authority? How do you feel about those terms as it relates to the wedding industry? And tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, it's so funny because it's one of those things I think they're starting to get overused, especially as people wedding pros who maybe they're doing this 20 years thinking, you know what, like, I don't want to do this forever. Like, I love it, but maybe physically I don't want to be at a certain age running around doing 12-hour weddings, or maybe I've got something to share. And so we're seeing an influx of people who are, which rightly so, they're experts in their field. And so they're trying to build thought leadership and maybe create an alternative revenue stream, which allows people to maybe they can mentor, paid mentorships, coaching, things like that. And so we're seeing those words thrown around a little bit more. What's funny about this, PR is how the way you get perceived in the world, like you creating that reputation. And so thought leadership walks hand in hand with that. I think it's essential part of, again, that expertise is and your value are a big part of your personal branding. And so I do think it's an essential component for most personal brands, because at the end of the day, if you're looking to move up at your job or somewhere else or get hired for something or even impress the couples in front of you, they want to see that you're an expert at what you do. And so thought leadership through content marketing, whether you're speaking, writing, helping out in Facebook groups, whether you have control over your own blog and you're creating content that are tips and tricks, that you hand out freely to people so that they can see you're an expert. I mean, I think it's essential personally.
How do you feel like, developing thought leadership and, kind of becoming that authority figure can help kind of transform our business and more so, how can we use that? Because it really seems like it's, I guess for us too, we have like online businesses, and so it really seems concentrated online, but we're all running local businesses. I mean, I have a local venue. So how can we translate all of that, quote, thought leadership so that it really benefits the actual business and not like our online presence?
Sure, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of offline things you can do as well. I mean, it could be, and it's not always, part of it is you have to decide with thought leadership, what are you a thought leader in? Get as specific as you can. It could be something like, I want to be able to do more LGBTQ weddings, and I want to be a thought leader in this. And so offline, maybe you do sit on some panels where you can lend insight. Maybe you are networking and helping connect people. For me, when I was building my personal brand, it was less about, oh, Megan's great at timelines and she's super type A about it. It was more like Megan's a connector in town. Megan's when you go to if you need anything, like you just need to be connected to the right people. And so for me, my offline presence was grabbing coffee dates with people and networking and having that give attitude, which translated into me being kind of an indispensable part of working with, other vendors, which led to more referrals. It's a hard one to answer because, at the end of the day, the question is, again, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What areas can improve thought leadership? And then how do you keep promoting that thought leadership so people see you as that expert? So, now as OFD, I use writing and speaking mainly. And so what we do is have a press page. We make sure our blog showcases the fact that we're speaking at TSC, we're the VP of the National WIPA board. And so that we've learned by targeting our audience, we know what impresses them, and that translates to more business, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Absolutely. I wonder I'm learning so much. As we are building our personal brands, or maybe we want to start, or maybe kind of, pivot a little bit because maybe if we're listening and we're thinking, gee, I don't really have a strong personal brand, but I'm getting a ton of tips, and so now I want to start. What do you advocate for, kind of having a plan, or should we just like go out there?
Sure. No, I'm a firm believer in a plan. And the good news is you don't have it doesn't have to be as formal. Like, you've got to put something down on paper, so to speak, or virtually. So clear, a few things you need to identify. And this is a very easy kind of formula. One is, what message do I want to put out there? What message do I want to put out there? What is it about me I want to project? What parts of my personality? What parts of my expertise? What part of my value? And I can't answer that because everyone is so up to their own goals and individual, things. But what do I want to project? And then who's my target audience? So is it employers, current ones, or maybe future ones at other companies? Is it my prospective customers and current customers who can refer business? Is it, my vendors? Could it be the media? Could it be friends and family? Because if you're really targeted to a local audience, your friends and family can absolutely be also, singing your praises as appropriate. More often than not, it's going to be a mix. Growing up in the wedding industry, when I first got started, it was, my employers, and I would say probably a mix of family and friends. That was who I, and prospects too, but they kind of came in the door because they knew the brands where I worked. And then as I jumped into OFD, it was going to be more about my current clients and prospects as well as the media. So it shifted. So the message, what's the message I want to put out? Who's my target audience? And once I have an idea of what channels do I use to get that message to the target audience? Like that target audience, how are they consuming information? For me at OFD, most of my folks are reading the industry publications. They are attending the conferences. They're doing webinars. They're listening to a great podcast like yours. So of course I'm going to go to those places. If I'm local and I'm looking to move up in the ranks or differentiate myself as a planner or photographer, then I'm going to go to the right networking groups. And I might be guest writing on some of my fellow vendor blogs. You know what I mean? So it just depends on, what's the message, who am I trying to get it out to, and what are the appropriate channels. When it comes to goals, you've got to make sure that you're giving yourself a timeline. Otherwise, we're just going to keep chasing down that goal. Like in order to measure it, in order to measure success, you want to put a timeline on it as well. So you can see a plan does come together. There are, I'm sure, some really great templates out there. I would say, I just want to get down the message, the target audience, how I'm going to do it, and give myself some deadlines. Personally, because I tend to thrive on deadlines,
Absolutely. Yes. They give you a level of accountability.
Absolutely. So to do it like that, and just know that it's fluid. You got to understand that things are going to change, your goals are going to change. And, make sure you know how you're determining success too. For me, for a long time, my success was going to be based on the quality of job opportunities coming my way. And now it's going to be more based on the quality of the brands I'm working with, the quality of my media placements, and the diversity involved with it.
And so that kind of leads me into my next question. And so it sounds like, your goals have shifted or evolved, not shifted, but evolved over time. And so if someone's listening right now and they feel real comfortable with their current personal brand, but maybe they are transitioning. So maybe they would like to begin their speaking career, or how can we kind of seamlessly transition our personal brands if we'd like to add, that new piece of our message?
Absolutely. I think it's always great if someone's in a spot saying, hey, I'm pretty comfortable in my personal brand, but I want to do some pivoting. And I think what you can do is more than likely, if you really feel strong about your personal brand already and you're looking to make some additions like we talked about, it's going to be organic anyway. So then the question is, how can I stay true to what I'm projecting already? And what kind of, you're going to have to revisit, like we talked about, kind of, pulling up your, pulling up your boots here and diving into researching and finding new channels. That's typically what you're going to have to do is, okay, I want to be able to make some changes. So now we have to start small and build this part of my personal brand. For speaking, it's a matter of asking myself again, what's my area of expertise and what can I lend to this larger conversation of all these speakers that's going to be different? It'll complement what people are doing, but it's going to be different than what other people are doing, because you don't want to go in and suddenly, there's a reason I don't go after sales, because Alan Berg does an amazing job at that, as does other people, Meryl Snow and the like. So I'm not looking to compete with them. I'm looking to forge my own path with my area of expertise. So that took some time to research and develop. And then really going after some of the smaller stuff to start, looking at webinars. I think podcasts are a great way just to talk about your area of expertise, which will lead, that helps you kind of stay fresh for speaking. Going to local universities or your alma mater if you live nearby and seeing if you can do some speaking and just start building up that portfolio.
So good. Yes. And I agree. Podcasting is a great way to develop or kind of hone your message and speaking skills. And so remember that everybody be guests on podcasts or start your own. It's so fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we have covered so much information today, Meghan. This has been an incredible interview. If I feel like there's so much to learn. I mean, we just scratched the surface. I can guarantee that because you are in this world 24/7. So if I just wanted to know like your top 3 things that I should do to get out there and start building my personal brand, would you say that it's those kind of 3 things that you identified, or is there one other thing that we can do today after this call?
Okay, that's a great question. I do think it's really a matter of going back saying, what's my message? Like really, sit down with yourself in a coffee or a tea or what have you, and ask yourself, what am I looking to accomplish? What's the message I want out there? And then who am I looking to target? Specifically, if you're a speaker, start researching opportunities in your area. If you're a writer, or you want to do some more writing, start connecting with I would say start connecting with other vendors in Tennessee. If maybe you can offer some guest blogging in the off season. And I'm going to add more homework. One more overall thing too is really give a good hard look to where you network. Don't just go to the places because that's what everyone else is doing. Like, are they in line with your goals? I mean, I got involved with WIPA, even though we don't have a local chapter. Now I'm very involved locally with NACE, but and actually nationally with NACE now too. But I wanted to do more with WIPA so I could have more of a presence on the West Coast, being East Coast based. And so ask yourself, like, do you need to pivot with your networking to make sure you're connecting with the right people? I think we get very comfortable about where we network because it's like time to hang out with our buddies. I think it's time people need to expand on that. There's some really great local, regional groups. There's women business owner groups. Expand your horizons.
So good. Yeah, that's great advice. I know that networking can sometimes feel like networking, but if we take Meghan's advice and really, serve other people, but also use it as a place to build our personal brand and kind of switch it up every now and then, I feel like it could be exciting and fun.
Absolutely. I'll come back another time and we'll talk about that. That's like one of my favorite things to talk about.
I was about to say, I was like, this feels like a whole other topic.
It is. It absolutely is. So,
well, Meghan, you obviously have so much going on. You have an incredible business. I would love to know, and I ask this question all the time. I'm obsessed with these, back end things. How do you manage your business and your projects and your team? Like, what tools do you use? What are your favorite things? I know you like Gmail, obviously.
Smoke and mirrors. No, I'm just kidding. So we live off of a few things. Finding a project management software has been so important to us. I'm such a checklist girl, and we have a team who collaborate here and offline, and like my WIPA members and all that, fellow board members and stuff. So we use BaseCamp. BaseCamp's wonderful. I know some people use 17 hats. For us, BaseCamp's great because we can assign stuff to each other. So I use BaseCamp pretty much every 5 minutes throughout the day. Gmail, we use Google Apps for Business to be able to share everything at once. And I travel a fair amount for speaking, so we use Dropbox as cloud storage, which I recommend to anybody. And then I love Woofoo as well. So WUFOO.com. Woofoo is wonderful for on the go collecting the right information you need from clients and vendors, and it's personalized forms. So all of those really run us well. And I would say in my personal life, we use AnyList. It's a free app. And my poor husband, we use it together. And I have an almost 4-year-old. And so for us to be able to remember what to bring to daycare and grocery lists, and we've all been there. Someone's at Target. What do I bring home? And cleaning lists. That has been invaluable to making sure that at home we have a happy household too.
Oh, I love it. AnyList. Okay. These are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'm like, AnyList, BaseCamp. Yeah, I love BaseCamp. I used it when I was working for real estate, in corporate life. So BaseCamp I love. And it's very clean. I love the layout of BaseCamp.
BaseCamp's amazing. I'm in BaseCamp 2 right now. I know they have 3, but we wouldn't be able to integrate, move everything over, and it's my entire brain. So it's like I have to be able to move it over. So it's been great. We actually just adopted it at WIPA this year. I begged for it to be in the budget. I begged, borrowed, and stealed to get it in there. But now we're going to have the whole national organization. A lot of our to-dos and deliverables are run through it. So I'm a huge fan of it. I need a T-shirt or something from them.
You do? Yeah, BaseCamp. If you're listening, please send Meghan a T-shirt. She deserves it.
A T-shirt or a water bottle.
Yeah, there you go. Well, tell me, as we wrap up here, Meghan, I would love to know what's on the horizon for you and OFD Consulting this year in 2017.
Yeah. Well, I'll be speaking. So quick shout out to folks out there. I'm attending Cater Source. I'm not speaking, but I'm looking forward to connecting with clients and friends there. I'm speaking at Wedding Wire World, both LA and DC. I should be attending this conference. I don't know if I'm speaking yet, but I'm the conference education chair. So I do like to go. I'll also be speaking at Wedding MBA. You can find me in Philly in April. If for WIPA, I'll be speaking there. That was confirmed this morning. So that's like hot off the presses. So from a speaking standpoint, yeah, I know it's an exclusive, but for the listeners out there, please don't hesitate to drop me a line if you're in the area, say hello. And then for the company as a whole, we're actually launching something very exciting this spring. I can't go too far into it now, but we're getting to a point where I really wanted to marry the idea of education and action. We represent a lot of really wonderful top tier brands, but I'd love to work more with small businesses who are looking to expedite their press portfolio and say, hey, listen, I need to be empowered. I need all the right things. So literally, I've spent the last almost year taking my brain and putting it on paper and working with really the most amazing team to make it happen. So I'll be sure to share more with you down the road when we're ready to, throw the confetti up in the air.
Deal. That sounds great to me. And that's sometime this spring, you're thinking?
Yes, it's going to be spring. I hesitate to say, but I'm conservatively saying April. I have to work it around some of my speaking stuff to make sure I'm here for the launch. So
you bet. Well, keep an eye out for that, everybody. I'm sure, as Meghan said, she'll probably update me. So I'll either update the show notes. Maybe we'll do another episode. I mean, who knows what it is? I'm sure it's something really incredible. So I cannot wait. Oh my gosh, anytime. Meghan, it was seriously such a pleasure and truly just an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. The pleasure's all mine. I love podcasts, so it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan anyway, so it was great to be here.
Thank you. We are like podcast soulmates, so we
really are. You and I offline, we need to share our favorite ones, besides yours, of course.
Yeah, we already know what number one is. No, I'm kidding. I have lots of those. So tell everyone where they can find you online if you would.
Absolutely. Best way to find me is ofdconsulting.com. That's where you can connect with me. Meghan with an H, Meghan at OFD Consulting. I spend most of my time on Instagram. If you like pictures of coffee and cats and toddlers and wedding stuff, then you can find me just OFD Consulting. Very easy to find me there.
Excellent. Meghan, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.